The Auckland Council has agreed to pay its share of a $1 billion budget blowout on the City Rail Loop project, but it won't sell off its car parks to help do that. Last month it was announced the project, which will create a rail loop in the city centre and allow for more train travel, would now cost $4.4 billion. As a 50-50 partner with the government in the project, that means that the council needs to pay its share of the extra funding. But first, councillors had to vote to allow that. It took them 6.5 hours to agree to that today, and the Mayor Phil Goff had the last word. He said the whole city would benefit from the rail loop.
Because without a transport system that works across the city, doesn't matter where you live, wherever you go to work, study, play or visit, you will be part of a gridlocked city. This project has to go ahead, and when it's completed, and I'm reminded of Chris Darby's comments about the stations, they will look great and the service will be great. And the public appreciation of public transport is great now. More than 90% satisfaction. We'll be proud of what we've done. We won't be proud if we walk away from it and say, all too hard, we'll do nothing, let this city close down.
And our reporter, Rowan Quinn, was there and she joins me now. That was a really confident sounding and enthusiastic sounding Phil Goff. I mean, 6.5 hours, you say. Why did they decide to pay up in the end?
Well, I guess if they were listening to Phil Goff at the end, who did have the last word after, as you say, 6.5 hours. So it wasn't as simple as that. He basically said you're going to be left with a big hole in the ground if you don't pay up. And they had the City Rail Link bosses were in early on, and they said that it's a contractor's market, and that if the council didn't give them some sort of surety of this funding, that the contractors would basically walk away. And they sort of said, oh, we've been keeping them sweet by telling them that this is a legacy project and they want to be involved with it, but you know that only goes so far.
Yeah, only goes so far, doesn't it?
Exactly. So you know there were some councillors who put up a bit of a protest and all that time, and Mike Lee was one of them. He said that you know this was too quick a decision. They sort of found out last month about this funding, and he felt that they were being bulldozed into having to cough up $500 million of ratepayers' money. And another, Daniel Newman, he felt that the government should be doing more, that yes, they've agreed to be a 50-50 partner, but now the budget's blown out. He said that Auckland ratepayers already pay a lot of money and they pay the fuel tax, you know, that the rest of the country doesn't pay, that this is part of the national transport infrastructure, and that the government should be helping to come up with the shortfall a bit more than they are.
Did they all play nicely in the sandpit in that 6.5 hours, or was it quite heated? What was the mood like?
It was, I think, some of them were quite exasperated because, you know, we had, there were a lot of amendments and then debates on those amendments. Some of the amendments were going nowhere. So there were a few frustrations. I wouldn't say anyone was getting too angry, but it was pretty frustrating, I think, for everybody involved. I mean, no one wants to be sitting there for 6.5 hours on one agenda item that in the end they passed pretty much, you know, as the council staff had recommended, they pass it. But
there is a lot of zeros in this figure. It is a lot of money, and what people listening will want to know is how they're going to pay for it.
Yeah, well,
are we paying for it?
Yeah, well, the one of the items that was on the table that was quite controversial was to sell off the public car parks, and that's now off the table. That was off the table in about hour 1 or 2, so no one wanted to do that, have an outright sale. What they're still considering doing is making some money from those car parks, like they might sell the concession to operate them, or they might partner with a private developer to do something snazzy with them. But that was only actually $50 million of the money that they need to come up with anyway. Most of it has come from fiddling with the budgets, it seems. So the council staff have said that they've had another look at them and they can take some money here and there out of improved operating costs, that they can, that interest rates are much lower than when they first kind of made their projections, and that saves $100 million or so. And they're fiddling a little bit with how they manage their cash flow to save interest costs as well. So they're actually saying that most of that money comes from existing money in the budget. They're just kind of moving around or making it look a bit better.
Moving the deck chairs.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Rowan. Rowan Quinn, who probably deserves a chocolate fish for sitting through that council meeting on our behalf.